Okay, I'm going to show you how to make this really cool 3D flower using a paper plate. The materials that we need for this are a paper plate. I just have these little ones at my house, so that's what I'm using today. I also am going to be using some scissors. I have some just regular glue that I poured into a lid. This was just like a recycled lid. And then I'm also going to need some tape. So I have all these things handy. Now, to start the flower, I'm going to use my plate as a guide. In the middle of the plate is this circle. I'm going to cut the border of the plate off by just cutting around the circle. Now, as I'm cutting, my helper hand over here is turning the plate so that I'm always cutting on a curve, cutting around in a circle. So I have this part and I have this part. I'm going to set this part aside for now and make the inner petals of the flower. So this is the part that I'm doing right now. This little section here where the paper is wound in on itself. So to do that, I'm going to just be cutting along these guidelines. There's already these little divots in the plate here. I'm going to cut maybe like every other one, or cut between, about a ½ inch. I'm also leaving about a ½ inch to the inside of the circle. So right here I'm leaving, I don't want to cut all the way through. So just going around. Now I'm just cutting slits. But if you want to make different types of flowers, and I'll show you that in a second, this is the part where you might spend a little bit more time cutting and shaping each of the petals. And depending on how you do that, it can give different looks to your flower. This is just like probably the quickest, simplest one. So now that I have this all cut, all I have to do is start winding it around itself. So just kind of spiraling it in. You don't have to be too fussy about this, and it'll start to naturally kind of roll in on itself the further you get along. You can see it's already starting to look like a rosebud or something. Okay, so I'm going to secure this part right at the edge. I'm going to grab a little piece of tape and just tape it to hold it in place. Okay, right now I can go ahead and pull out. I'm just using my hands, using my fingers, working my way around and sort of sculpting this inner part of the flower. I'm pulling on each of these petals and kind of bending it backwards. As you're going around, you'll see you can kind of shape the flower too by sort of pulling it, and you can make it a little bit taller. Sort of reaching in with my fingers and pulling them out. And you could really get super into this sculpting part. You can always go back later and do more too, but for now I just want to pull it out and make it look a little bit more like a real flower. Okay, I'm going to set this part aside, and now I'm going to take the inner part of the plate. And if you want to, you can always use a pencil first to draw petals around, or you can just kind of freestyle it a little bit and use your scissors to draw. I'm just cutting out like a multi-petaled round flower shape all the way around that circle. And the more you do it, the more detailed you can get with your petals. I'm also just going to kind of cut a little bit of an extra slit between the petals so that as I put my final flower together, it'll just give me a little bit more to work with so that I can shape it. So I have the base of my flower and I have the inner part of my flower. What I found is the easiest way to do this is just to dip that inner part into the glue and then just press it onto the base. Okay, now I'm going to let this sit, I don't know, maybe 20 minutes. And then later, once it's all put together, I can fold the outer petals up to kind of hug the inner part of the flower. And then I can go back and pull these out and shape it and kind of sculpt it into whatever flower shape I like the best, okay? So these are some other examples. This plate, I started cutting a little bit different. Rather than just cutting slits, I cut some triangles into the edge, and that's gonna make a flower that's a little bit more like this, a little point here on the ends. I did, on this one, I cut more of a round shape for the inner petals, and it makes it have like more of a rounder, softer look. And these, I did the same thing where I made a base, I made the inner part, and I put them together. Now, once you have your flowers, there's a lot of different things you could do. You could put them all together and group them into a little bouquet, maybe draw a little vase underneath. You could add a stem onto it by taking like a pipe cleaner and maybe putting a little bit of glue on the end of it, sticking it onto the back of the flower, and then you could actually have three-dimensional flowers and put them in a real vase. Okay, it's sort of up to you where you take this after you make your basic flower. You could add color, gives you all kinds of options to create artwork with these beautiful paper plate flowers. I hope you'll try it.